video as well for documentation and for those who can't make it today, because I think got at least 10 emails saying that this time didn't work out well. Ulla, do you want to start sharing your screen?
Yep, just getting it pulled up right now.
Perfect. So the first part is communications. There's still some delays. We're working on it. I think I said that several times. That's just going to be a rinse and repeat part. But one thing about the communication that we wanted to bring up now, which was triggered last time, you know, we are obviously FDA recognized, and there's basically 3 items today on this agenda. If you look at the landing page, under sort of the header, there's like this little thing now that says that we're recognized by the FDA. This is not live yet, but it's currently in review. Brandon, you may have some updates on that, but I wanted to also point out that to use the FDA logo in a collaborative community, we can't just use the FDA logo, but we had to pull all the various logos. This is similar to the MDIC website. So if you are not represented here or your organization is not represented, please send your logo or whatever you want to be portrayed there to Ulla, and then we can include this. So the change that we're announcing here is basically the recognition by the FDA as a subheader, the symbol, and then the third part is a brief sort of summary, which you see on the bottom right, about what collaborative communities are, and this little symbol, which symbolizes the collaborative community and what they do. And we had to also take out that FDA symbol and put a little machine learning convoluted network abstracted symbol in there. I don't know if that is representative of what we're trying to accomplish, but that wasn't in the collaborative community symbol by the FDA. So I think that was sort of the update on that. Are there questions about it, or Brent, do you want to say anything about it or have any internal updates?
No, the only thing, that whole recognized part, language might not survive. It's actually, we pulled it from the Nest, the MDIC Nest web site, so I thought it was gonna go through, but you know, it's funny, especially in the early stages, that FDA really wants to make it clear that we're not the leaders of this. We are members who have joined because of all the conflicts with advisory committees, and this is not an advisory committee.
Sure.
So we're finding that line like in real time on what kind of language is appropriate and not. When I say we, I mean people here in this call right now, me included, especially.
Joe, Roberto here. I saw a document passing a few months ago for review before signing, but I haven't received it back to put my signature on. Is this something that is still pending, or?
So there, you mean the charter?
Yep.
That is available. If you want to sign it, just drop Ulla an email and she can add the signature.
Okay.
So
Okay.
it's final, it's executed, but if you want to go on there at some point, if we have meeting in person, we will do a, you know, celebratory signature session, including some hard and soft liquor, but right now we just have to do it virtual. So there's no ceremony right now, but
Okay, perfect.
no, but please just email them. Yeah, so if the language survives or does not survive or will be changed, we definitely gonna update everyone, but we just wanted to mention this. And call to action, if you want your symbol or logo on there, please email it, forward it to Ulla, and then we can just add that. I think it's just sort of a portrayal that we're a community. It's absolutely voluntary, no must, no mandatory parts on this. Okay, let's move on to some more sort of content parts. I think in the agenda, you have a website link. There is a link to a support request. And this comes from the tumor-infiltrating lymphocytes group and breast cancer. And number one is, obviously, we have one of the international leaders here, Roberto, and he can probably tell us a little bit about this and what that specific project is. And this is one of several requests for support from the PIcc, from this group. And again, just before we jump into the individual components, keep in mind we are a collaborative community. If you totally hate a project, you can obviously say that out loud or put in the chat or whatever, but the actual purpose is to solicit opinions as well as potential collaborators. So if you like the project, you can either directly get in contact with Roberto or with Ulla and say, hey, I want to contribute to this. Or if you want to be, just a discussant or a project lead, it's completely up to you. So without further ado, Roberto, do you want to briefly explain what this is about and what you're looking for?
Okay, thanks, Joe. So very briefly, a few months ago, representatives from the major pathology organizations, so the CAP, European Society of Pathology, the Latin American Society of Pathology, the TILS working group, who took the initiative, a European breast pathologist expert working group took the initiative to develop a manuscript which was accepted in the Lancet Oncology on the perils of combined diagnostics in our daily practices. So we have solicited the community to consider a set of solutions which you can find in the manuscript on the Lancet Oncology, which I'm very willing to share. Just send me an email. Now, this is just informative to the community. The next step would be to discuss or to start a discussion within the FDA about, is the combined diagnostic narrative as we know it today still functional? And for that reason, we took the initiative to have an informal discussion with the Oncology Advisory Committee of the FDA, for the simple reason that they have within a week a meeting where they will discuss the accelerated approvals of a variety of drugs in several different tumor types, all linked to combined diagnostics. And the example of combined diagnostics that we elaborated on in the last oncology paper is on PD-L1. So it has actually nothing to do with TILS as such, but with combined diagnostics. And we have prepared a document which is endorsed by the same organizations as before. So the European Society of Pathology, the Latin American Society of Pathology, this European working group, the TILS working group, of course. The CAP is still under discussion, whether they will be part of this. You have seen the document. It's a very informal item to initiate the discussion. When you discuss or when you talk to FDA officials from the drug side and from the biomarker side, they both say that there are issues with the combined diagnostic narrative, but it's very difficult for them to try to initiate something. The reason why we took this initiative, we put a lot of recommendations and considerations for the Oncology Advisory Committee, is to initiate a discussion within the FDA on this issue. So it's not a formal request. It's just to raise awareness within the FDA and that there are real issues on the combined diagnostic narrative. And PD-L1 is a very good example. HRD assays will be a next tremendous issue if we apply the same narrative as we have now for PD-L1, because immunohistochemistry is very simple and easy conceptually. HRD assays are much more complex, much more expensive, much more difficult to validate. Definitions vary according to the drug, not according to the biology of HRD, and then there's a variety of issues with HRD assays, but all of them are based on the simple narrative, a combined diagnostic linked to a drug, and then considered by an important part of the reimbursement agencies worldwide as the only good assay available, which is by evidence not proven to be true. So in short, what we just want to initiate is have this discussion, present the concerns at this meeting. It's informal. The Oncology Advisory Committee just given advice. I hope they will give an advice to initiate a discussion within the FDA. If that would be the result, that would be fine for us. And that's it. And then we see what happens. So that's in a nutshell.
So I pasted the document, which is a few pages. It's a great draft that Roberto shared with us. So I just pasted this. It will be on the website later on for distribution. I think you know that this is going to live somewhere within this realm. What I would say why this is relevant is because there's definitely a need to provide scientific evidence for whatever this regulatory framework will look like. And very likely some of the questions of, let's say, biomarker qualification and the evidence framework that the FDA will take into account may derive from some digital pathology applications or quantification. So just as an additional sort of shout out, thanks for putting this together, Roberto, and leading this effort. And whoever is interested in this particular, let's call it realm, focused on PD-L1 or let's just call it as a use case biomarker, and please reach out. Questions from the group for Roberto?
Yeah. Hi, Roberto. It's Esther, and I jumped in
Esther.
a bit late. Sorry about that. So I missed the beginning, but I did
No,
read
it's
the
okay.
documents.
Mm-hmm.
It's really good to have that, and I support it too. And you did see probably some of my questions. I don't know, but and again, you might have said it in the beginning. So one question is, and I heard you saying that it's more like to raise awareness, and I think the FDA is pretty well aware. But who are you going to address this to, and are you considering to also include drug development tools and then using the best, the biomarker terminologies, and includes CEDAR?
Yes.
Instead of only CDRH.
Yeah, correct. So actually knowing by discussing with FDA officials is that for accelerated approvals, for example, that the analytical validity requirements are barely checked because the pathway that has been used by industry is to use the pathway towards the drug approval to concomitantly approve an assay. And the analytical validity requirements have barely been touched in this type of approvals. And what we see in our daily practices is that much of the analytical validity requirements that getting known on these assays are being done after the approval by the FDA, meaning that you get a lot of biased analysis and interpretation by the industry because they are barely able to say that another assay besides their companion diagnostic might also be good to be used by patients to be given their drug. So one of the items that we would like to initiate is that the drug people and the biomarker experts from the FDA engage together in the very early stages of approval of assays. So it's correct. What we try to bridge is that the drug people and the biomarker people, I always forget those abbreviations, but they are in the document, engage in a very early stage together to try to validate this type of assays. So actually demanding much more analytical validity requirements than what is demanded today, because it's very much focused on drug efficacy and not on assay performance.
Okay, got it. Yeah, and I think that they do focus on it because my experience is a bit different there. But I think it's good to raise more awareness, and definitely it will be added value if biomarkers will be involved earlier onwards, and that you use the biomarker discovery and then so on. So
one of the additional items which was not put in the document as such because I had to limit it to 2 pages was, for example, the concept of cross-licensing assays for the same drug.
And attach the 2 parking as shown.
Sorry? Okay, so is cross-licensing assays for a particular drug? This is something which is not done these days within the FDA, and this applies to all types of assays, whether it's PDL1, whether it's HRD assays, whether it's digital pathology or machine learning tools in the future.
Yes.
So one of my main concerns is that for machine learning, for example, is that when you have a big pharma who chooses a partner to develop an assay, outsourcing or even buying, Roche has bought Ventana. They develop a phase 3 trial because they have the means to do this. They use a machine learning tool as an assay to develop whatever marker. The trial gets positive, you get an accelerated approval, and the drug is linked to only that machine learning tool. And this impedes competition. And this impedes unbiased analysis by the same industry. What we see with PDL1, for example, is that publications being published and being criticized at the same time by industry on those trials are extremely biased because they turn and switch the data in such a way that what the end result is always that the compact diagnostic is the best, while big parts of the community looking at the same data come to different conclusions. And it contaminates very much the field in terms of how reliable can we rely on those assays. So the awareness is there when you talk to them individually, but the way how to initiate the change is extremely narrow. And if by this initiative we would get a formal review by one of the FDA documents or an internal policy that the drug people and the biomarker people collaborate together at a very, very early stage, I think that would be already a tremendous achievement. And then the cross-licensing is a kind of Trojan horse, which we hope that it may be considered, because I do think that would be the solution to this.
Yeah. One element here to add is that there are currently 12 package, label, insert companion diagnostics that use 3 different clones of PD-L1 antibodies on 3 different platforms for 4 different drugs. That is clearly not aligned with what any pathology practice can actually put in place. Maybe some really large scale labs that could run 3 or 4 clones as a service. But, you know, I think you're touching upon some of those key issues.
Yeah.
Well, you know,
and to add to that, it's not only about it's unworkable in a daily practice setting. It's there is now evidence that one of those assays, for example, is much less sensitive. So you miss patients because you use that assay.
I think for this group, it's also very important. If we take one example, because it says it on the slide, breast cancer, to classify one case triple negative breast cancer, you have to use non-FDA approved tests to classify a tumor as triple negative, to then apply a companion diagnostic that is FDA authorized. So I think this framework definitely needs some updating, and you know, it's definitely a very burning and relevant topic. So I very much appreciate it.
Yeah. So in terms of timing, I'm going to submit within 48 hours. So it's
and I also want to say that it's 9 o'clock, 9:20 p.m. where Roberto is. So I very much appreciate him jumping on to help.
Yeah,
so
I'm scoring TMAs. So it's okay, sorry, Esther, you wanted to say something else? So.
Yeah, no, I just want to say it's a great initiative, and if you want to bounce off some ideas, more than happy to.
Okay. This is just a start. There will be the purpose of this initiative. We have convened with the editor of JNCI to write an editorial on these issues. So what comes out of this discussion will be in a manuscript. And I hope, but again, no offense, if this group decides not to be part of this, absolutely no offense. But if you want to be part of this, you will be in the loop, not only for this editorial, but also for all the future papers that we plan to publish and to work on this.
I think obviously we can't speak for everyone, but I think there's definitely some interest. So please, if anyone wants to be part of it, or Roberto in reverse, if you find a time or date that you know you will engage, if you could share that with us, we definitely disseminate it among the members to make sure that you get maximum leverage and interest from the various subject matter experts. Fortunately, we have to move on because we have a couple of other things on the topic or on the agenda. Next topic is the federal notice withdrawal. I presume many, if not all of you, have heard about it. I just don't want to comment. We're going to put a full PowerPoint about the argumentation in there. The key element I just wanted to mention here is that the key element was, or one of the key elements was, that it was published without adequate scientific support. That's the word for word wording in the withdrawal, but what is meant, I believe, is regulatory science support. And I think that is a very positive message. The negative part on this is, in my personal, or I don't know, I spoke to several of you, opinion, some parts were certainly valuable. And it is now similar to how we put it on the website on our federal notice comment. It's upon us to decide how we're going to provide the scientific evidence that, for example, displays may not be the key limiting factor of digital pathology, but currently they're kind of in an end-to-end approval, a part of it. So question is, how can we, attack some of the individual devices? Again, we're going to put a PowerPoint presentation with the detailed public laws and codes that have been referred to by HHS and FDA, as well as an email of the primary contact person for commenting on the withdrawal notification, because you can also comment on the withdrawal, not only on the federal notice. And if there's interest in talking about, I think there was definitely interest in talking about the displays, again, email to Ulla and we whip something together. Any other comments? I know there are a lot of domain experts on this topic on the call. Brendan, you want to say something about this now that it's withdrawn? No? Gone? Irrelevant now.
It had a lot of uncertainty for everyone here, but it also had a lot of uncertainty for my colleagues. So I don't think that everybody, me and everybody else, knew what the plan was before, during, or after each of these decisions. It was way above my pay grade.
Again, so in case, I think the displays is probably the, let's say, most relevant component that can be tackled in a way. I know that that was at least some of the emails that we received after the withdrawal. So if there's some interest on that, please email Ulla or myself, and we're going to work on that. I think the next item on the agenda is an update from Friends of Cancer Research, but I don't see Laura on yet. She may have had some delays, but let's just jump forward, correct? So an element that is known to probably everyone here is the 21st Century Cures Act information blocking rule or rule set, which is one of the many, I think there's a total of 7 big groups of changes, but the information blocking part is probably something that's very, very important. We're gonna put the College of American Pathologists Cures Act fact sheet in the website update that lists everything that's relevant for pathology practice. We got a lot of questions about the timing and is it considered, relevant if you just delay the release, and etc. So all of that has been addressed by the College of American Pathologists. We just got a lot of questions. We want to defer to that as more relevant to that group than to ours. But why I think this is interesting is that one of the rule sets within this, let's call it realm, is that if you have scientific evidence for a harm, which is one of the exception rules, I could see some interest in that regarding like how to provide that evidence. But I don't know, I know Kevin and Mary are on. If you want to say a few words about the CAP initiative, I know AMA is soliciting input for an official statement about the information blocking exceptions, but any quick comments, Kevin? Or
no, we've this is Mary. We've kept up with this. I've had many internal conversations, and so our FAQs actually are based on a lot of the questions that have come into us too. So that is really the most up-to-date thing, and we do update it as needed. So that
Perfect.
it's a really good reference. So thank you for pointing that out.
I just am pasting it in the chat, but it's quite a hefty PDF, so you should get it momentarily. It's still loading. No, that's actually, I think that's a very reliable and amazing resource. So I don't think we're going to touch this, but since a lot of people consider that, you know, in a way, some regulation and science related to that is asked for, we just wanted to mention that. The AMA is soliciting input for harm right now. So they're basically asking, are you aware of, by removal of information blocking, meaning releasing, for example, cancer diagnosis immediately, whether anyone has sort of incidental evidence or cases where that led to an actual harm. So that's the part that we wanted to just point out. I think that was the most recent development, I think end of last week. So I think that was sort of all related to, I don't know, the news regarding the 21st Century Cures Act. I think the next update is from the work groups. I think Sarah is on, right? Sarah, do you want to provide a brief update from the trainees group?
Yeah, absolutely. So this Friday, we have our first speaker event. It's with a gentleman you all know and love, Dr. Lakshman Ramamurthy. We're going to be doing like a training, like teach-in style, in which he's going to talk about common FDA pathways and how he interacts with them from his position in a big pharma company. So he's going to give that talk for about 20 minutes, and then I'm going to interview him for about 20 minutes. And then there's like an open question and answer period in which anyone can come to the microphone and ask him any of your burning questions. We have a lot of trainees and young scientists signed up right now. So I'll go ahead and paste the link to the registration form in the group chat. And if you could just share that with your trainees. We're really accepting any trainees who want to be involved, and it would be super helpful if you could help us spread the word. Thank you.
That's fantastic. Thanks for organizing this. And I hope for those who are in institutions with some folks who are interested in regulatory science, please share it with your trainees, interns, postdocs, fellows, etc., or those who consider themselves lifelong trainees. You know, those are also existing. I heard at least of some of those. I think the other work groups, I haven't heard anything. So this is kind of like a 5-minute slot to get some other updates. I don't know. I know there was a Payor group meeting. I don't know who I can call on. Maybe Esther. I don't know if you want to, or Frank. I know you've been on those calls. If you want to maybe briefly summarize something in a few sentences.
Sorry, I couldn't get myself unmute. My phone was acting weirdly. Yeah, so what we, it was very constructive meeting with the Payor work group. We discussed our next steps, and that would be starting to create a use case, highly likely. That's the idea. To request for what we can do as this PIcc to develop a kind of a blueprint to generate PLA codes for reimbursements. A next step will be is that we're reaching out to our contacts and ask them if they would like to discuss this with us to see what level of evidence is required, what kind of evidence, and what would be, for example, key endpoints that we should deliver to come to a reimbursement path. That's very high level overview. Then the ultimate goal is that we will develop a kind of blueprint that everybody can use to generate PLA codes. High level. Thanks.
Perfect.
Any questions?
I think this is kind of the big promise here, right? That we harness the power of many to then share it with the whole group. So instead of having one vendor or one lab work on a proprietary laboratory code, it would be, you know, sharing the blueprint and then sort of, you know, harmonizing that probably in terms of submissions that may be appreciated by, you know, CMS, for example, if that's the addressed party. But I just think that that's a great example. For those who don't know the Payor strategies work group, I just pasted the link. The Payor group has already published a paper, so they're kind of, you know, leading here the strategy in terms of like real practical elements. So I definitely applaud the efforts in terms of like working on the blueprint, and I'm super excited about this. If there are no other updates from the other working groups, I don't see any raised hands. Brandon.
Yeah, I'll just say, you know, we've been doing some data analysis, and pathology informatics is coming up. We are presenting at Pathology Informatics, fortunate enough to get a podium spot. And so that presentation should get into some pilot study data and analysis, which I think a lot of people have been waiting for. And we're also presenting at the FDA Science Forum next month. And Kate is putting together a poster. Actually, we're kind of doing all that together so that they're different size version of an update, including data, figures, and things like that. And we might be able to circulate that ahead of time to get some feedback. And I'll try and work with Ula in that regard. The last little piece, I don't know if Matthew Hanna is on this call today. I don't see him, but he's now the chair of the CAP machine learning work group, which is great. He's a big collaborator in the HTT project, and so hopefully we'll get a little more synergy back and forth for that project and that group. That's it.
Perfect. Thanks. All right, I turn it over to Jitesh.
Share my screen.
Perfect.
Can I share my screen? Maybe.
Yes, I'm just trying to find your window. Here you go.
All right. This can be very brief. Share my screen. Okay, MDIC updates. No, not this one. That is, no, wrong window. Okay, I'll start with this. So MDIC's annual public forum is on June 1st and 2nd. So we are continuously developing the agenda. So there are two things which are relevant for this PICC now. So on June 2nd, there is going to be a live session specifically dedicated to collaborative communities, which are convened by MDIC. There are three MDIC convened collaborative communities: NEST, Case for Quality, and PICC. So there will be a live session on June 2nd. In addition to that, we will have a more elaborate session dedicated to PICC as an on-demand session that will be available throughout June and July. So we'll tape something late May and of course I haven't included it in the list here. On demand, we are still populating this list here. So that will be another one. So the live session, I mean, I'll work with Joe and others to figure out what's the best way to give a very high level outline in the combined presentation. And then the on-demand session, I'm assuming, or I'm hoping that the work groups can give a little more elaborate details about the progress, and we can have a panel of work group leads. So any suggestions and idea for an on-demand session? Usually these sessions are an hour or so. I mean, send a note to Ulla, Joe, as well as me, so we can figure out, a good session to promote all the activities we are performing here through Alliance. That's my main update, and I have some. I mean, I cannot find out my window where upcoming activities and so on. There are some updates, but Ulla will share it when we send the notes or updates. Back to you, Joe.
Perfect. Thanks a lot. So it's great to have additional support from MDIC. I know a lot of the device manufacturers that probably are interested in what we do don't even know about it. You know, we encounter those quite a bit, and that would be very, very much appreciated to have that additional exposure to, you know, your membership. So thanks a lot for that. Ulla, do you want to go back to screen sharing? I think the next item was the FDA Voices meeting. So this is one of the big push to accelerate, you know, medical device innovation using various tools. I think, Brandon, you had mentioned that, you know, Kate is presenting some of that. Do you want to say a few things also about real world data, real world evidence? Because these are these are open, right?
Yeah, I think so. That email went out publicly. I'm not participating in that. You know, my radar is only so big. But certainly when I see something like this, I try and let you and Esther especially and Ulla know so that it can be communicated here. But I'm not participating.
Perfect. So I think the one message to everyone here is the RWD and RWE branch, because one of the key elements that I think a lot of the current submissions entail is to move away from strictly clinical trial-based data, but actually to incorporate real-world evidence in regulatory submissions. So when it comes to machine learning, one of the paradigms that is being discussed in those groups is, for example, you build an algorithm using your data, whatever you consider your ground truth, and then you test it or validate it or do your inference testing using real-world data. To change sort of the scope of the various components of, let's say, the ground truth that you couldn't account for, or to really leverage the whatever real world experience you have. So I think that part would be highly relevant to folks who are interested in this. The other side, the regulatory science tools and programs, I think we spoke about before, so I don't have to
Actually,
go there.
Joe, let me say one sentence or two on that.
Yep.
This is not specifically the medical device development tool program. This is maybe the precedent to that, you know, something that might not go through the entire MDDT program, but and we imagine a lot of them are going to be developed internal to the FDA, you know, because it's a lot of burden to go through the MDDT, and we feel like we're a little special, so we are carving out this little space to make sure people know about the tools that we've developed. And we're just trying to put a little more formalism around it, and especially with how we're sharing it, so that people understand what these tools would be useful for and what the expectations of people that use them could be. And certainly Jeff and Ed are both, you know, writing to advertise that, you know, the MDDT program really is, you know, some people thought only external for external folks. And this is where we're trying to just make it a lot more clear what we have already developed and are using and expect to be useful in submissions.
Perfect. Thank you.
And actually, they circulated your editorial, your correspondence on what something about regulatory science. The title, I forget what your title was exactly, but
it's on the next slide.
Like, I know those people.
Thank you for the alley oop here. So a few general updates. There's one publication entitled "Do Not Sell Regulatory Science Short." Please check it out. It will be on the website in the publication section. There have been a few requests coming regarding the changes, or since we spoke about this, I think one group has discussed this at the 314, the PIcc meeting, regarding general data protection regulations, HIPAA, and the revisions of the various states. So what happened regarding privacy law changes here is In contrast to the European Union, where GDPR basically governs every person, every individual's rights, and HIPAA largely governs institutions and their composing members or individuals, this alignment has apparently been several times discussed, and I got a few questions. What is our update? We did a little bit of digging, and what you see here, the top part of the screenshot, again, this will be on the website update, is a relative comprehensive overview over the privacy law changes in various states. What's shown here is just that in some states it has already been signed and finalized, while in others it is being discussed. So there are a lot of different, let's call it, sharing data implications when it comes to privacy law. And it seems that the current trend looks in the US as if states come up with their individual rules to govern certain, data sharing activities. So clearly California was spearheading this. So take a look in case you were interested in that. So that's an update on privacy law changes. This was just a resource. This has very little to do with what we're trying to accomplish. The ties or the relevance for regulatory science approaches here would be, how do you share data across the Atlantic right now when it comes to trials or international submissions? So that's the link here. And then the third item here, which is the NFDI for Pathology initiative. This is spearheaded by Peter Bohr. I think I saw him log in earlier, so fantastic. Peter, thank you for staying up late. He's also plus 6 hours, so it's nighttime in Germany. Quickly, this is a national research data infrastructure being set up specifically for digital pathology, and it's currently a proposal. We will hear more about this, but one element that he wanted to present probably in our May steering committee is to explain what this national research data infrastructure will look like, and possibly submit a letter of intent to collaborate also with us, and is looking for some support, from membership, and then potentially also some data exchange. So Brandon, when it comes to some of the high throughput truthing data, I think this may be a great infrastructure to think about, possibly some additional collaborations needed. Peter, I don't know if you want to say something about the timeline on this, because that's really a multi-year project. If you want to quickly comment, I don't know if you're on. I can't see all the screens right now.
Yes, hi, I'm there. Can you hear me?
Yes, perfect. Thank you, Peter.
I'm nearly in my pajamas, so I will not turn the camera on. I hope you're okay with that. So yeah, so thanks for this. We're trying to get funding to develop a research infrastructure which would be nationwide and specifically tackle the full broad aspects of data in digital pathology and in pathology in general, starting from quality of data management, security, ethical, legal issues, and so on, standards. So it's a huge project. It should be embedded within the development of research infrastructure, research data infrastructure in Germany, which is a huge project encompassing all research fields. And the timeline is that we will have the full application end of September, and there will be a lot of review rounds, and we will get the information whether it is potentially funded in June 2022. So a lot of work ahead of us until we know if it's funded, but it was very well accepted by many other research infrastructures. So we might be able to, even if we are not funded, we might to tackle several aspects within other infrastructures in the future. But anyhow, we will try to get to get this going, and it is essential with such an infrastructure not to be just an island within Germany, right? But to interact internationally, so that we do not do the same thing twice, and that would be just fantastic to kind of get in contact and establish cooperation. So in the first place, the idea would be that if this would be interesting for the community here, that we would kind of prepare a letter of intent so that it's clear that we would kind of interact and join forces. And then should we get funded, then we would of course get in a much more detailed exchange how we can profit and combine forces.
Perfect. Thank you, Peter.
Joe, can I
Yes.
find out how to get in touch? Because, you know, this kind of maybe not acts so immediately actionable like what Peter was talking about, but the IC3R group really wants to be involved in those conversations, and that would expand your network, Peter, to include more organizations in Europe and beyond. And so we're hoping to maybe connect some dots among organizations that are doing similar things, but maybe have different purposes in the end.
Yeah, that's fantastic. We also have partners within the infrastructure which are also involved in image data commons, for example, as another important infrastructure. Also, PIcc, we are already in place, and PathLake and iCard and so on. So this is, I think, very important and very time consuming, but still I think very important to somehow try to communicate and get together in a way.
Yeah, I figured the connection here is likely the infrastructure that we will see probably in 5 years, where countries have their networks, academic medical centers in that country have their individual resources, but then the network and how that intersects, let's say at the European or multi-country or international level, will be different. So I thought that, what Peter has proposed, and he will share more details with us in the next steering committee meeting, I think is really visionary to see how they accounted for pixel, metadata, infrastructure, and the workflow, which I think is quite unique. This is including, DICOM, including research and clinical applications. So I believe that this is, everyone is trying to figure this out now. So obviously I can't, or Peter can't promise whether this will be the final state, but I think it's very important for us to consider collaborating with efforts like that. And, the high throughput truthing group has kind of paved the way for that. So
yeah, maybe just one short addition,
sure.
Because many of these many of the current initiatives go for centralized solutions, and what we will be building on is a fully decentralized way how to move on. So maybe that's one interesting aspect that seems to be quite complementary to many other approaches as well, and in our opinion might also kind of be a motivation for many people to take part in that. Just as one major idea of the approach.
Perfect. Yes. All right. Next item, Ola, or was that I think there was one other item that I wanted to mention, which we got some input. I paste this in the chat. This is sponsored by MD Anderson. So this is University of Texas MD Anderson Cancer Center. This is a so-called Wunderkind, German Wunderkind. I don't know how you pronounce it in English, but this is a STAT 2021 STAT Wunderkind announcement for early career researchers who are not yet independent scientists, but want to become program leaders. And the question here is whether, I know that a lot of you have published already on machine learning, AI tools, digital pathology. So if it's related to cancer research, I think I just wanted to announce this. You can read more in the link. I don't want to say anything else, but this is just a link. So click the link and take a look at it. This is a stat news link for this Wonderkins award. That was sort of just a pointer to this. There were a few important dates that we didn't find out early enough about to announce it through our pathway, or let's say email serve. One was a computational pathology symposium organized by the Brigham and Women's Hospital. This was April 19 and 20, so just a few days ago. Just a reminder, if you have some events or things, please just shoot one email to Ulla, and you can get this basically on the upcoming meetings and events. If you want to organize a work group or so, same rules apply. You know, that's kind of the big promise and the infrastructure that we set up. Just send one email and you tap into the currently over 400 members, and some people may join your work group or your project. So you see the calendar is filling up with some events, but not all are on there. And that's just sort of an additional reminder that this is working out well for some. And I know Ulla is doing a great job in helping some of the work groups in organizing and getting website updated, etc. So big high five to Ulla, and just a reminder to do this. Perfect point landing. Last 5 minutes, open to everyone's suggestions, comments, jokes, practical jokes on Zoom. I don't know.
Joel, I didn't
Yes.
get the Wunderkind link. Can you try pasting that into the chat again, please?
Oh yeah, give me 1 second. Don't know why it's not. This came through now. Perfect. So that's the announcement here. So other topics, suggestions, questions. Kim,
This is
Keith,
Keith. I'm
yes.
wondering whether with the withdrawal of the federal notice, whether there's something proactive we can do to bring some of these issues back.
Yeah, so I had mentioned earlier,
regulators,
I know some people were discussing whether we should have a work group on displays, right? What would be the scientific basis to assess the quality of displays, you know, with, let's say, resolution, color, reproducibility, etc., for end users to be able to say something like, we did the following approach to establish substantial equivalence of a random versus an FDA approved display. And that is obviously requiring some tools or some approaches that I don't think are currently easily available. So there could be, you know, a composition of software plus some measurement tools. I know in Brandon's group, people think and have thought about this quite a bit. So I believe if there is an interest in that, to establish evidence for, you know, consideration of removing that particular component, not just all 83 things, I think there may be some interest. Is that what you meant, or more machine learning based or more complex tools?
well, really any of the digital pathology tools on the list that deserve further consideration. I think by doing absolutely nothing, we let the comments sit and we take a reactive stance. And I don't think that's the intent of most of the people here on the call.
So I know Josie in Trappen has kind of asked whether we could do something regarding displays, because that seems like a logical starting point. It seems like the lowest complexity part. You know, it's somewhat unusual that it's, you know, it's such a heavy emphasis, but I'm sure Brandon has an opinion and some data regarding that. But
so I would also say, you know, viewers are that next step after, or even in parallel. And when it comes to like the Connectathon for the DICOM standardization is a good platform for that, whether you're already involved in that group or not. They are at least addressing some of the standardization issues, and but then also Esther and your DPA team you've already mentioned that there's some effort there on collecting the data given the pandemic, people working from home. You know, is the door open to be inviting others to be involved? That's something that we should be asking right now.
Yeah, I think once the public health emergency rule set is lifted, there will be probably, I don't know, some changes coming. So being proactive about it, Keith, I think is absolutely the right approach to know what the evidence is. I think there were some papers from MSK and some other institutions that established how to validate digital pathology in a clear setting. Those are informative, but when it comes to the actual devices and tools, I think the evidence is existing. I know there are some papers that compared monitors and reproducibility, but how to measure that and how to make that practically and let's call it FDA friendly is probably currently a hurdle. But this would be the group to do it. So I know, Kim, we spoke about this before. That's why I thought it may be a natural fit to discuss that. Like, what is the standard to assess that? But
and to be planning, maybe a little deeper discussion where there's actually time to get into that.
Maybe should we make that a little project? Or Kim, do you consider that part of your group on the biomarkers, or do you think this should probably be separate?
So either way, however we want to parse it out, I'm totally fair game to help to address it because it's definitely a need. And I'm really glad that Keith brought that up. So thank you.
I don't know if this group has been in touch with Dave McClintock at all. He's been a leader in this space, publications and so on.
Would be great to get in touch with him. All right, we're at the top of the hour. Want to be mindful of the time, and we're just going to send out an invite and see how many are interested in this topic. And thanks for suggesting it, Keith. Okay, thanks a lot. I hope this was informative, and we get the website update up as soon as possible.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Joe.
Bye.
Thank you, Joe.
Have a good day. Bye.
Bye.